It's been a couple of years now since I worked with my friend Andrew Carden on some videos about downhill pipe welding, root and hot pass and fill and cap. Well, this video is about the root and the hot pass, and we're going to talk about pipe and how practicing on plates can help you get there. So we did 3 practice plates before we did the pipe. This is just a straight up downhill 3/8 inch thick, and to start with just use 1/8 6010 electrodes. Also did an overhead, same 1/8 6010 electrode. Talked about all the things that really matter, like rod angle, the pressure you put on the rod, the amperage, the FITUP, and all the important things. And then the last one before going to pipe was just sort of a downhill at a 45, but with a 532 electrode, because the 532 electrode is commonly used for 12-inch downhill out in the field. So let's go into more detail with these practice plates. The first one, vertical downhill 332 land, 332 gap, 1/8 6010. Right away you can see Andrew kind of adjust the rod angle and really jam that rod in there and get it really where it needs to be with the arc length. And he's just reading the puddle here and trying to go about as fast as he can and still keep it jammed in there. You're not going to see a whole lot of light on the front side when you've got your arc length right and the FITUP right and the rod angle right and everything. You'll see a lot of fire coming out the back side, but the front side, very little light. Wound up at 90 amps for this root pass here. That's going to vary a little bit depending on what machine you're using, but we started off around 80 or 85. That wasn't quite enough. Cranked it up to 90, and with this FITUP, that seemed about right. Doesn't matter near as much what it looks like on the front as what it looks like on the penetration side. You definitely want it past flush or above flush on the penetration side. API codes and some inspectors are very, very strict on how much penetration you can have. So now let's do the hot pass. Jumping up to a 532 electrode for the hot pass, around 135 amps. That root pass was ground out a bit, and still the electrode angle and arc length and things still make a big difference. The goal of the hot pass is to really not leave anything behind, but also not disturb the root that you just put in there. There are several techniques that can work here. This is one of them. This is just sort of a little whip and pause, not coming out of the puddle, but just a little whip and pause motion. Kind of spread things out a little bit. All right, that's that. It actually pushed the root through a little bit, which is pretty common. But now let's move on to the overhead plate. You can see that fire coming through the backside there. You're going to see that the arc length looks essentially the same as it did going downhill. You don't want to see a whole lot of light. You got to keep it jammed in there. Not a whole lot of, whipping and pausing, just kind of almost a straight drag. After grinding the root pass a little bit, going to the hot pass, 532, 135 to 140 amps. The reason for the whip and pause here, where Andrew's coming out of the puddle, is to kind of control how much metal you're depositing, because it's very easy on the bottom of a pipe to get too heavy. And the inspectors in the field where he works are very strict on cap reinforcement. And yes, you can come and grind it off once you're done, but it's best to not have to do that. So that's the technique that he uses once he gets to the bottom of the pipe. Looks a little different, but it does control metal deposition quite well. Now for the last practice plate, we're going to jump up to a 532 on the root pass. 1/16 gap, 1/16 land, 126 amps. And the same things are going to apply. The rod's just bigger. Okay, so it's pressure on the rod, rod angle, travel speed, and of course you got to keep it jammed in there. And you kind of make little slight adjustments as you go. Like if you get too far ahead of yourself, you start seeing a big keyhole, you got to kind of back up momentarily. But you want to keep moving. Once again, the reason for stepping up to a 532 electrode here is because that's what we're going to be doing on the pipe. Same bevels, pretty much the same FITUP, maybe some slight differences there. You're going to have different FITUPs in the field anyway, so you have to be able to make some adjustments. But what we do here on the plate will work on the pipe. Now for the hot pass on this joint, we're stepping up to 3/16 diameter electrodes. And the reason for that is because that is very common in the field for the 12-inch pipe that we'll be doing. So the technique here is going to look very similar to that first downhill plate. Just a slight whip and pause, not really coming out of the puddle, but just giving the puddle a little bit of time to cool and to help control it. So now it's almost time to take all this stuff that we learned on these plates and put it to use on pipe. Now the difficult thing about pipe, one of the most difficult things, is just body positioning so that you can maintain a decent line of sight and see the puddle as you go down. So you're on your knees, you're gradually moving, you're trying to keep the rod angle right, you're trying to keep the pressure on the rod right. This is what makes pipe welding difficult. Or I should say difficult to learn, because like anything, once you learn all the little nuances, the little tips and tricks, then you wonder what the problem was to begin with. Like, why did this seem so hard to learn? But it takes effort, takes thinking, and it takes practice. So here's the root pass going in. This is just like that plate we did with the 532 electrode. You can see that the arc is kind of trying to burn off sort of to one side more than the other, and you have to kind of fight against that. So if it starts to favor one side, you tilt the rod and point toward the other side. Andrew is coming up on a tack weld here. In just a second, you'll see that the light kind of change a little bit there, where the arc is not pushing through the inside of the pipe anymore. I didn't go over it, but Andrew feathered all his tacks a whole lot before getting started. That's a very important thing to do, is feathering your tacks. Of course, having the right fit up before you even get started. And sometimes pipe wedges are used for that, maintaining the gap, keeping the pipe from closing shut. And then if it does close shut, you have to run a thin grinding wheel up in there to kind of open it up a little bit sometimes. It just depends. But you can see Andrew is trying to kind of keep his rod angle consistent. It's pretty much pointing toward the middle of the pipe with just a little bit of a drag angle. And he's keeping it jammed in there. And coming up on that tack, again, you're going to see the difference in the change in the look of the arc. Coming up on that feathered tack, overlapping it by a good bit before he snaps out. For the hot pass, jumping up to 3/16 70-10. Again, that's common in the field for this size pipe. And again, kind of going through some dry runs because body positioning is important. For the hot pass, once again, the two main objectives are not leave anything behind as far as inclusions or slag or anything or any wagon tracks, and also not to disturb the root that you put in there. So you don't want to blow through, you don't want to remelt, you don't want to reconfigure. And the root was ground a little bit before the hot pass here. Andrew's just kind of showing slow motion here on how he would kind of walk this thing down, propping with one hand and taking the arc down to the bottom of the pipe. So for the 3/16 electrode, you got to go a little hotter. Now these are 3/16 HYP, also kind of known as hippie rods. The HYP stands for high yield pipe. So for this first little bit, this is going to be just about like welding that 45 downhill plate. Same technique, a little back and forth hitch, a little whip and pause, but not coming out of the puddle. Andrew's trying to prop with one hand and kind of gradually bend his knees and gradually squat down to gradually keep his head in the right line of sight to see the arc like he needs to. And then as he gets down to the bottom, once again, he will transition to technique a little bit, to more of a whip and pause, to coming out of the puddle to control the deposition rate. Because again, it's very easy to get heavy on your deposition when you get on the bottom. So here we go, transitioning here, coming out of the puddle a little bit. 60-10s and 70-10s, they're made to do this. I know I'll get a lot of argument here, but this is just one of several techniques that can work. This is what Andrew does when he gets to the bottom to control the reinforcement, especially on the cover pass. Well, that was just root and hot pass on 3 plates and pipe. If you want to see each individual video, I will link them up in the description of this video. I hope this helps. If you have a pipe welding test in your future, a downhill root pipe welding test, and best of luck to you. Best of luck in your career.